All right, let's jump right in. When we talk about switching to clean energy, it's really easy to think of it as this, I don't know, this far-off thing that's happening someday. But the data, the actual numbers, they tell a completely different story. This isn't some future concept. It is a full-blown revolution that's happening right now. And honestly, it's moving way faster than almost anyone thought possible.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This quote really says it all. Just last year, in 2023, the world installed more new solar power than every other energy source put together. Yeah, that includes all the fossil fuels, all of it. This isn't some slow, gradual shift. This is a massive, seismic change happening under our feet.
So to really get our heads around this huge transformation, we're going to break it down into a few parts. First, we'll talk about why this revolution is just so urgent. Then we'll meet the real stars of the show, solar and wind. After that, we'll look at some other key players, power from the earth and water. We'll also tackle that big question about getting power 24/7. And finally, we'll get to the good stuff, the incredible payoff for all of us.
Okay, so let's start with the stakes. Before we dive into all the amazing solutions that are popping up all over the world, I think it's really important to understand why we have to move so fast, why we need to get away from the old way of powering our planet.
Now, this chart right here, it just cuts through all the noise, doesn't it? It gets right to the heart of the climate crisis. Over 3/4, more than 75% of the greenhouse gases that are warming our planet come from one single activity: burning fossil fuels. It's the main cause of the problem, which, also means that changing our energy source is the main solution. And the cost? It's not just environmental. The World Health Organization tells us that the air pollution from just burning these fuels leads to 7 million premature deaths every single year. I mean, that is a staggering public health crisis, and it's directly tied to the light switches we flip and the cars we drive.
And beyond climate and health, our addiction to fossil fuels just creates this whole cascade of other huge problems. First, they're finite, right? They will run out eventually. Second, their prices are just notoriously all over the place, which causes these economic shocks that hurt everybody. And finally, being dependent on imports creates massive geopolitical tension and just makes countries feel insecure about their energy supply.
So, with all that urgency in the background, let's turn to the heroes of this story. We're talking about the two technologies that are not just leading the charge, they are completely rewriting the rules of energy economics. Let's talk about solar and wind.
So how do solar panels actually work? It's actually really elegant science. Sunlight, which is made of these little particles called photons, hits the silicon cells in the panel. Boom! That impact knocks electrons loose. And the movement of those electrons, well, that's literally the definition of an electric current. Now that current is DC, direct current. So a little box called an inverter just converts it to the AC, alternating current, that comes out of our wall sockets. Simple as that.
Okay, now this chart is arguably one of the most important charts in modern history, seriously. Because of decades of innovation and just massive scale, a single watt of solar power that cost $77 back in 1977 now costs around 20 cents. That is a 99.7% price drop. It's an absolutely mind-blowing cost collapse that has made solar the cheapest electricity humanity has ever produced, period.
And solar's partner in this revolution, of course, is wind. It's easy to kind of get used to seeing them, but modern wind turbines are absolute marvels of engineering. To really get the scale, just picture this. The blades on some of the biggest offshore turbines are longer than an entire professional football field. And wind power isn't just one thing. You've got two main flavors. Onshore wind, the kind you see on land, is the most common and cheapest form, and it can even share space with farms. But if you go out to sea, the winds are way stronger and much more consistent. And that lets us build those truly gigantic turbines we just talked about, which can generate a massive amount of power from one spot.
But hey, this revolution isn't just a two-trick pony. While solar and wind get all the headlines, there's a whole team of other renewable technologies that play a super crucial role in building a reliable and diverse clean energy grid.
First up is the original renewable, hydropower. It's actually still the biggest single source of renewable electricity in the world, giving us about 15% of the global total. And its huge advantage is that it provides what we call baseload power, which is just a fancy way of saying a steady, reliable flow of electricity 24/7, no matter what the weather is doing.
And speaking of 24/7 power, let's talk geothermal. This tech taps directly into the crazy amount of heat inside our own planet. And just like hydro, it's consistent and totally reliable. If you want a real-world example, just look at Iceland. Geothermal energy provides about 30% of their electricity, and it heats 90% of all their homes. It's amazing.
Okay, so this brings us to the single most common question, the big but that always comes up with renewables. And in this next part, we are going to tackle that question head on. We're going to look at the tech that's designed to solve for a world where sometimes the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing.
Right? This is the question. We've all heard it. We've all probably thought it. If solar and wind are the main players, what in the world do we do at night or on a totally calm, cloudy day? This is the challenge of what they call intermittency, and it's the nut we have to crack.
And the answer, in 2 words, is energy storage. This is the linchpin. This is the key piece of the puzzle. It's the ability to capture all that abundant, cheap, clean energy when it's being made, and then just save it for when we need it later. This is what makes a 100% renewable grid not just some fantasy, but a real engineering possibility. And what's so exciting is that there is a literal explosion of innovation happening in storage right now. Lithium-ion batteries, the same kind that are in our phones, their costs have plummeted by 97%, and they're being built at a massive scale. But look at what's coming next. Sodium-ion batteries that use cheap, abundant salt, flow batteries for huge, long-term storage, and even iron-air batteries that could be incredibly cheap. But batteries aren't the only tool in the toolbox. We also have green hydrogen. Basically, by using all that cheap renewable electricity to split water into hydrogen and oxygen, we can create a clean, transportable fuel. And this is the key to cleaning up heavy industries like making steel or powering huge cargo ships and airplanes, all the sectors where batteries just aren't a practical option. So, we've seen the why, we've seen the how, and now let's look at the payoff. Because this transition isn't just about avoiding bad things, it's about actively building a better, richer, and healthier world for every single one of us. Let's start with jobs. The renewable energy sector is already a global employment powerhouse. We're talking more than 13.7 million people working directly in the industry. And that number is just growing like crazy year after year, creating good, local jobs all over the world.
And the economic wins go so far beyond just jobs. Think about it. When you generate your own energy from the sun and wind, that means energy security. You're no longer held hostage by crazy global fuel markets. It means cheaper energy bills for families and businesses, and it means huge savings on healthcare costs, because cleaner air means healthier people.
Now we have to be real here. This transition isn't a walk in the park. There are still big challenges. We absolutely need to upgrade our electricity grids because they were designed for a totally different century. We have to make sure that the supply chains for critical minerals are scaled up in a way that's sustainable and ethical. And, well, this is a big one, we have to overcome the intense political resistance from powerful legacy industries.
But in the end, it really all comes down to this. The technology is here, the economics make perfect sense, the benefits are crystal clear. We know for a fact that we can power our entire civilization with clean, renewable energy. The only question left is how fast we choose to do it. And that choice, well, that choice belongs to all of us.